While I was barely holding on, she kept moving closer. At first, it looked like she just wanted to help. Then it felt like she wanted to stay. And before I realized it, she was reaching for everything I had. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what it takes to keep going when you've been pushed out of your own life. And it's about coming back, not to beg for forgiveness, but to reclaim what was mine. If you had asked me 6 months ago to describe my life, would have smiled and said, I'm happy. Not in some movie-perfect way, no coffee by the window at sunrise, no glamorous weekend getaways. It was the quiet kind of happiness, the one that lives in ordinary days. We had a modest 2-story house in the suburbs. The carpet in the living room was still stained from when our son spilled orange juice, and we never replaced it. Our car only started on the 3rd try every morning. And we had our kids, 2 little worlds that kept me orbiting. Chloe, our 8-year-old, had fiery red hair like my grandfather and eyes that carried more weight than a child's should. Ethan, 4, was pure energy and wonder. He loved dinosaurs, trucks, and waking me up at 5:40 a.m. with, Mommy, the sun is rising. My husband, Daniel, was steady ground. We'd been together over a decade. He had his quirks, forgetting the trash, grabbing the wrong yogurt for Chloe, but he was patient, kind, and constant. He'd hug me from behind while I did the dishes, whispering something ridiculous just to make me laugh. Weekends were Target runs, coffee and donuts, piles of laundry, and cartoons for the kids. Evenings were simple too. Once the kids were asleep, I'd clean up the kitchen while Daniel handled the dishes. Then we'd either watch something on Netflix or just sit together, side by side in the quiet. And there was Megan. My best friend since school. We'd shared everything: crushes, heartbreaks, weddings. She was Chloe's godmother, the first person I'd text a dumb meme or a picture of a new haircut. Sometimes, in the middle of all that, I caught myself worrying about how good everything felt. Like life was a pendulum. If it swung too far toward happiness, maybe something bad was waiting on the other side. But I always brushed that thought away. Because I loved the life we had. I loved its messy, ordinary rhythm. I even loved the little spats with Daniel, like when he folded the towels the wrong way again. I loved waking up at night because Ethan needed water, only to find Daniel half asleep in the doorway holding a cup of milk. We weren't flawless. But to me, we were perfect. And I didn't realize then that a small crack was already forming in that picture. It began with tiny things. Fatigue. At first, I blamed it on the season, springtime, work, the kids. But soon I was barely making it through the day. My energy seemed to vanish before noon. Instead of falling asleep watching TV, I'd pass out next to Ethan's crib before I could even finish his bedtime story. One afternoon at work, my vision blurred, and I almost collapsed. I laughed it off, saying I'd skipped breakfast. But that was the first time I saw something in Megan's eyes, something unsettled. She picked me up after work and drove me home. We sat in silence, her hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. You look worn out, she said gently. Have you had a checkup lately? I brushed her off. It's just the season. Spring always hits me like this. Plus, Ethan's not sleeping at night. Really, it's fine. And I almost believed myself. Almost. But the truth was my body wasn't just tired, it was crying out for help. Every step I took felt like walking across thin ice, waiting to crack. And my so-called perfect life was already slipping away. I didn't rush to the doctor. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. As long as there was no diagnosis, I could pretend everything was fine. Until you hear those words from a doctor, you can still tell yourself it's just allergies, or a vitamin shortage, or sleepless nights. Even a lousy pillow. Anything but something real. And life was too busy anyway. Chloe was preparing for her big moment in the school talent show. She'd chosen Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid, and every night I helped her practice her pitch. Her voice was soft, but when she sang, it could stop my heart. How will I look on stage, Mom? What if I get embarrassed? You'll be the most beautiful mermaid this town has ever seen, I told her. And I meant it. Meanwhile, Ethan was lost in dinosaurs. He'd stomp across the floor to show me how they walked, roar to prove how fierce they were, and remind me how sharp their teeth should be. His favorite toy was a stuffed T-Rex he'd named Rex. And every night before bed, he'd announce, "Rex thinks Mom should sleep more." I laughed every time. But inside, something tightened in my chest. Climbing the stairs left me breathless. Standing too long in the kitchen made my legs burn like I'd just run miles. And one morning, I woke up with fingers so swollen it looked like I'd been clenching my fists all night. Daniel noticed. I don't know if he understood how serious it was, but one evening, after I fell asleep at the dinner table with my head on my arms, he brushed his hand through my hair and whispered, "Hannah, maybe it's time you saw a doctor?" I didn't answer. Fear kept me frozen. And that night, for the first time, it wasn't just exhaustion I felt. It was something heavier. Like my body was warning me, "You're not steering this ship anymore." I am. So I booked an appointment for Friday. The day before, Megan showed up. She brought coffee from my favorite cafe, cinnamon rolls, the kind I loved, and a brand new set of dinosaurs for Ethan. We sat on the porch while the kids played in the yard. "You look pale," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "Hannah, are you really okay?" "I'm going tomorrow. I'll do the tests." "It's just," I exhaled. "It's scary." She reached across, took my hand, and squeezed firmly. "I'm with you, all right? If you want, I'll go with you. No matter what happens, I'll be here, for you, for Daniel, for the kids. You know me." I smiled, letting her words warm me. I honestly believed she was there out of love. That she wanted to help. And at the time, I had no reason to think otherwise. Not then. The next day Daniel offered to come with me, but I said no. I wanted things to feel normal for the kids. Chloe should still go to school. Ethan should stay home, playing in his room while his dad worked. I told myself the doctor would say something simple, a little iron, a little rest, and life would go on. But the moment I sat down in that office and caught the look in the doctor's eyes, I knew. Everything was about to change. The room felt unbearably quiet. Too quiet. I sat across from Dr. Lawson, a thin man with graying temples and eyes full of cautious sympathy. On the desk in front of him lay my chart, test results, pages of notes. His fingers slid over the papers while I gripped the armrest so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Miss Porter," he finally said, lifting his gaze, "I want you to know we'll do everything possible. But your situation needs a very serious approach." "Is it cancer?" I whispered. "Is it definitely cancer?" "No," he shook his head. "But it isn't simple either. You have systemic lupus erythematosus. It's a chronic autoimmune disease." The words meant nothing. I'd heard them before somewhere, but my mind couldn't process them. "Your body is attacking itself," he explained gently. "That's what's causing the inflammation, your joints, skin, blood, even your organs. Your immune system has gone out of control." I sat there, silent. It didn't feel real. More like a scene from a medical drama than my own life. "But, can it be treated?" "We can manage it, slow it down. But there's no cure. And in your case, it's already affecting your liver and lungs. The numbers don't look good." His voice sounded muffled, like I was hearing him through glass. "What happens next?" He slid a folder toward me. "Hospitalization. 2 to 3 months. We'll start experimental therapy. A new drug gives us hope, but it's serious. You'll need your full focus. 2 to 3 months. 2 to 3 months away from my kids. Away from home. Away from everything normal." How was I supposed to explain to Ethan that his mom wouldn't be there all spring? How could I tell Chloe her mother had to stay in the hospital because her own body had turned against her? I don't even remember leaving the clinic. My head spun, my ears rang like alarms. I couldn't drive home. Couldn't even think about telling Daniel. Not yet. I sat in my car, staring at nothing. I didn't even start the engine. A woman nearby unloaded groceries while her little girl squealed about ice cream. I watched them, and the tears came hot and silent, running down my cheeks. I wanted to call Megan, but couldn't. I wanted to call my mom. But she'd been gone since I was a teenager. I wanted to run. Then my phone rang. Daniel. I wiped my face, drew a breath, and answered. Hi, sweetheart. How's it going? His voice was steady, familiar, comforting. Everything's fine, I lied. I don't even know why. I just couldn't tell him then. Not like that. Not over the phone. How are the kids? I asked, forcing my voice steady. Ethan made a sandball and said it's a meteorite. Chloe's rehearsing her song for the 125th time. I swear my ear's about to fall off. I let out a laugh, brittle, shaky. You okay, hon? His voice grew heavier. Yes, I lied again. Just tired. I might take a walk. Get some air. All right. Don't be long. I ordered pizza. We hung up. And I sat in my car, the diagnosis hanging over me like a storm cloud. I don't know how long I stayed there. An hour? 2. Finally, I drove to the park. I sat on a bench, watching kids race across the playground. And in that moment, I knew one thing: I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Not for them. But I also knew I'd need help. More than I wanted to admit. That night, after Daniel drifted off and the kids were asleep, I went into the kitchen and called Megan. When she answered, I couldn't even form words. I just cried. Hannah? What's wrong? I have lupus, I whispered. They're putting me in the hospital. For a long time. And then she said words I'll never forget. Don't worry. I'll take care of everything. Back then, I thought she meant me. I didn't realize she meant something else entirely. I had never struggled so much with packing a suitcase. Even on our honeymoon, I hadn't weighed every shirt and pair of socks with such heaviness. But this time was different. I wasn't just heading out on a trip. I was leaving my home. My family. My children. And deep down, I wasn't sure if I'd ever return as the same person. Why are you going to the hospital, Mom? Chloe asked, sitting next to me on the bed. My heart sank. She was only 8, still just a child, yet already so sharp. I couldn't lie to her. Because Mommy's a little sick, sweetheart. The doctors want to take care of me so I can get stronger. So I can run in the park with you again. So I can bake cookies you won't eat because they're too vanilla. She laughed, a thin, clear sound that cut right through my fear. Will you be far away? A little. But Dad will bring you to see me. And I'll call, I promise. Her eyes dropped. You won't leave us forever, will you? That question pierced me. It was my own greatest fear, that even at her age, she already carried the weight of loss. I pulled her into my arms. Never. Even if I'm far away, I'll always be your mom. And I'll always fight to be here for you. She nodded, wiped her tears with her sleeve, and slipped back to her room. Ethan didn't ask questions. He just said, Mom, you won't forget my dinosaur, right? No, sweetie. Rex will come with me. And I did take that soft, worn dinosaur. I set him on top of my clothes. My throat tightened, and I nearly broke when I zipped the suitcase shut. Megan showed up the next morning to help with the bags. She hugged me tighter than usual. We're here, she said. Daniel, the kids, and me. I told you, everything's under control. You just focus on getting better. I nodded. I believed her. Or maybe I just needed to. Before we left, Daniel walked me to the car. We lingered at the door. I stood there, memorizing every detail of the house, Chloe's drawing taped to the window, Ethan's bike crooked on the porch. I'm scared, I whispered. Daniel kissed my forehead. You're the strongest woman I know. And I'll be fine. With the kids, with everything. Just hang in there, okay? I squeezed his hand before turning away and stepping inside. My hospital room was plain. White walls, gray floors. A plastic table by the bed. A TV that barely worked. The faint sting of antiseptic in the air. But the worst part was the silence. The silence that left me alone with my thoughts. Alone with a body failing me. Alone with fear. At night, I couldn't sleep. I listened to footsteps in the hall, the steady drip of the floor, the sound of my own breathing. Everything seemed too loud. I texted Daniel. He said the kids were asleep. Ethan had wanted a story. Chloe had trouble closing her eyes. They miss you, he wrote. But we're holding on. I shut my eyes and cried quietly into my pillow. Not loud enough for anyone to hear. Just enough to let it out. Because this was my new reality, a hospital bed, aching joints, constant exhaustion, and the ache of being away from my kids. I had to stay strong. If I broke, who would be there for them? But even then, something inside me twisted. It wasn't just me who was changing. Something was shifting back home. I just didn't know yet how much. The first days in the hospital felt like stepping into another world. You don't really live there, you drift. Between 4 drips, endless tests, nurses with their questions, trays of food you can't bring yourself to eat. For 2 days, I barely spoke. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't string my thoughts together. My head was like an old radio stuck between stations, catching fragments of 10 different broadcasts, none of them clear. On the 3rd day, they showed up. My family. Daniel walked in carrying Ethan, while Chloe clutched a teddy bear at his side. The second I saw them at the door, it was like a heavy film lifted off me. M.O.M. Ethan bolted toward me. He wrapped himself around my legs, then my stomach, and finally, even though he wasn't supposed to, climbed right onto the bed. You still smell like home, he whispered, burying his face in my shoulder. Chloe hung back, cautious. But when I opened my arms, she dove in. You've lost weight, she said softly. But your eyes are the same. I laughed and cried at once. For the first time, I felt like I was still their mom, no matter what the diagnosis said. Daniel laid my favorite pajamas on the bed and slipped one of our pillows under my head. So it doesn't smell like a hospital, he grinned. They stayed an hour. Then another half. Ethan refused to leave, and Chloe promised to write me letters. Daniel held my hand until the very last moment. We'll be back tomorrow, okay? Okay, I whispered, watching them go. And sure enough, they came the next day. But this time, she came with them. Megan. I was surprised, but not suspicious. Honestly, I felt glad. She arrived with coffee, flowers, Chloe's drawings neatly gathered in a folder, and a box of cookies. Well, Star, she said brightly, are you driving the nurses crazy yet? Only the orderlies, I joked. They say I ask too many questions. She settled in across from me and launched into stories, her neighbor's drama, how impossible it was to park at the mall, the dress Chloe picked for the talent show. I rehearsed with her yesterday, she added casually. We worked on her breathing. She's so smart. And then Ethan asked me to read him a story, can you imagine? You were at our house? I asked, trying to hide my surprise. Well, yeah. Daniel said I could stay with the kids while he ran to the store. You know how it is. I'm Megan. I nodded. Yes, she was Megan. My best friend. She kissed my kids goodnight. She knew their favorite games. She had a key to our house. And still, something inside me flinched. Like catching the faintest off note in a familiar song. Like hearing a word spoken just a little too smoothly. The next day, they came again. Then 2 days later. And again. And every time I heard. Megan and I baked cupcakes. We played Monopoly with Aunt Megan. Aunt Megan let us eat dinner on the couch. Megan was everywhere. And I started noticing. You spend a lot of time with them, I said one evening when we were alone. Yeah. Daniel's got a lot on his plate, 2 kids, work, house chores. I'm there for him. Anne. I love them, hon. They're almost like my own. She smiled and squeezed my hand. But for the first time, her smile didn't look real. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was worn out. That she was only helping. That I shouldn't be paranoid. But deep inside, a voice whispered. Hannah, closer. Time in the hospital moved strangely. One endless day, broken only by 4 drips, tests, and long stretches of silence where my thoughts multiplied like weeds after rain. They began preparing me for the experimental therapy. A new drug. New risks. I signed form after form, each signature heavier than the last, as if I were signing away pieces of my life. Dr. Lawson finally looked at me and said, "But there is a chance. And it isn't small. In your case, it could change everything." That gave me hope. But hope came tangled with fear. Because while I was here, fighting, my kids were out there, living their days without me. Daniel stopped coming alone. At first, it made sense, Megan was helping with the kids. Then it became routine. And soon, she was the one showing up with them, sometimes without Daniel at all. He's swamped, she explained. Work, papers, the house. I told him I'd bring the kids. Everything's under control. And I believed her. Even though something restless stirred inside me. Ethan would burst into the room, glowing. Mom. Aunt Megan and I baked cookies today. She let me lick the spoon. Chloe was quieter. But even she seemed tethered to Megan. She sat on her lap, whispered things in her ear, words I couldn't hear. And more, they weren't meant for me. I began to notice the slips. When Megan said our breakfast or mentioned how Daniel bought the kids a new toaster, it was like she wasn't just visiting. She was part of it. As if she belonged there. So I asked carefully. You've been spending a lot of time at our place, haven't you? She didn't blink. She just smiled and said. Don't be silly. It's convenient. I'm nearby, the kids know me, and they need me. It's normal. You're not jealous, are you? She said it with that light laugh, the kind that begged me to laugh too, to brush it off. But I didn't. The more I stayed silent, the more she filled my space. Not just in my life, but in my place. One evening, I finally texted Daniel. I can't stop thinking. Megan's with the kids more than she should be. Is everything okay? His reply came fast. Han, she's just helping. She's trying. You know they need their mom, and she's only playing with them, reading to them, taking them out. You need rest. Don't let this get to you. It's the illness, Hannah. Don't let it mess with your head. Those words hit like a punch. Don't get yourself worked up. It's the illness. I had only just started treatment, and already, they were doubting me. I sat there clutching the phone, and for the first time thought. Maybe it really is in my head. Maybe it's a side effect. Maybe. I'm just seeing shadows where there aren't any. I convinced myself not to lose trust. Megan was my best friend. Daniel was my husband. I was scared, that was all. This would pass. So the next morning, when they walked in, Megan with the kids, Daniel with a bouquet of lilies. I forced a smile. I laughed when she told the story about Ethan mixing up shampoo and shaving cream. I nodded when Daniel sighed about how tough it was to manage everything, but added, "Megan's such an angel." But inside, something had already cracked. My instincts. My certainty. My place in my own life. I was slipping away, little by little. Quietly. But for good. And deep down, a voice told me. This was only the beginning. The first time Daniel didn't come at all, I told myself I understood. Problems at work, he texted. I had to stay late for the quarterly report. Megan will bring the kids and visit with them, okay? Okay. I stared at that word like it was the symbol of our new reality. Daniel was home. I was here. And through her, he could send me his hug. And once again, I agreed. Because what else could I do? Megan showed up alone. Ethan was asleep in the car. Chloe wasn't feeling well. We didn't want to wake them, but I brought you some coffee, she said, setting a latte with almond milk on the table. Figured we could talk. How are you feeling today? Maybe tomorrow you could bring them? I asked softly. I miss them. Han, you need to save your strength. I'm with them every day. Everything's fine. Chloe's drawing. Ethan's made up a new dinosaur game. Daniel's hanging in there, but you can tell he's worn down. It's not easy for him. I nodded. Again and again. Then I noticed the chair. She was sitting in my chair, the one the kids had always called Mommy's throne. The one that had always been in my bedroom. She had brought it here, into my hospital room. That's my chair, isn't it? I asked quietly. Yeah, she said with a smile. I thought it might make you more comfortable. Smells like home, doesn't it? I watched her sink into it, legs crossed, glowing with ease. Too much ease. And inside me, something twisted. The next day, only Chloe came. No Megan. No Ethan. Where's everyone else? I asked, pulling her into my arms. Dad went to the store. Aunt Megan stayed with Ethan. Dad said I'm a big girl now, so the nurse let me in first. So Dad's here? I scanned the hall. He's parking the car. He'll be right in. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. Chloe was the one who always looked straight at me, who always spoke the truth, even if it was, "Mom, your casserole tastes weird." Now she twisted the strap of her purse with nervous fingers. "Sweetheart, are you sad?" "No," she whispered. "Just tired." I smoothed her hair. "You can always tell me anything. Always. Remember?" She nodded but stayed quiet. Then, almost inaudibly, she said, "Mom, I just want you to get better soon." I smiled through tears. "Me too, honey. I'm working on it every day." After that, I couldn't stop noticing things. Megan appeared more often than Daniel. When I texted Daniel, she was the one who replied. She sent me the photos of Chloe's performance, the ones Daniel should have sent. She captioned them, "Our girls." Ours? When I asked Daniel why I hadn't seen Ethan in 4 days, he said, "He's had a little cough. We didn't want to risk it." "Why didn't you bring him yourself?" "Well, Megan was already there. She said she'd take care of it." That phrase, Megan said, started to choke me. As if her word weighed more than mine. As if she were already the mother. The partner. The one running the house. And I felt something slipping away. Not just my presence in my kids' lives. But my role. My place. Each day it got harder to believe it was just paranoia. Chloe grew quieter. Ethan didn't want to talk on the phone. Daniel felt farther from me. And Megan, she was digging herself deeper into my home. I no longer believed this was just help. I was beginning to fear it was a replacement. That morning they called me into the doctor's office, but not because things had gotten worse. Quite the opposite. The early results from the experimental therapy looked promising. My liver numbers had gone up a bit, and the swelling in my lungs was easing. "There's a chance your body is responding," Dr. Lawson said. "But we need your consent to continue." "What exactly do you need?" I asked. "Your partner's signature," he explained. "It's required by the protocol." I called Daniel. He said he'd come the next morning. And honestly, I was excited. We hadn't had a moment alone in ages. He showed up a little later than promised, holding coffee and a new magazine. "Traffic," he said with a smile. "Sorry. But I'm here." We chatted for a bit. He asked how I was holding up, told me about work, and mentioned how Megan had done the grocery run while he handled a client call. Then the doctor stepped in and asked Daniel to sign paperwork. "I'll be quick," Daniel said, standing. Didn't even get to sip my coffee. I nodded, smiling. But once he left, I noticed his phone sitting on the nightstand. I wasn't planning to read anything. Really. I only reached to move it closer, ready to hand it back when he returned. Then it buzzed. Once. Then again. A message popped up. "Megan, yellow heart." My chest tightened. I shouldn't. I knew I shouldn't. But my fingers moved on their own. The phone wasn't locked. It was the happiest night of my life. "I can still hear you whispering my name. You said you loved me. Say it again when you get back. I miss you. Can I stay with you another night? The kids are used to it. I'm part of your family." The world collapsed. My heart didn't just beat, it screamed. Every word seared into me, burning away trust, memories, the life I thought I had. My best friend. My husband. Together. Not suspicion. Not paranoia. Proof. I dropped the phone back onto the table when I heard footsteps outside. My face was calm. A mask. Daniel walked in, smiling. "Everything signed. I'm heading out, all right? I'll come by with the kids later. Ethan really misses you." "Okay," I answered. My voice sounded steady, warm. "I'll be waiting." He kissed my forehead, and I nearly recoiled. His lips still carried the taste of betrayal. When he left, I sat frozen. 40 minutes passed, silent. Unmoving. Because I knew nothing would ever be the same. It wasn't doubt anymore. Not instinct. Not a bad feeling. It was truth. After Daniel walked out of the room, leaving the door and the phone behind, the world didn't shatter. It just went flat. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there, holding the phone, unable to feel my own body. It couldn't be real. It didn't make sense. Megan? My Megan? The one I drank wine with, laughed at dumb TV shows with. The one I helped pick up after her divorce, who once said I was her rock. And Daniel. My husband. The father of my kids. My. No. 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 I repeated it in my head like a mantra, but it did nothing. It wasn't just shock. It was paralysis. I stared at the ceiling. At the floor. At Ethan the dinosaur sitting on the nightstand. Everything felt unreal. Like I'd woken up inside somebody else's dream. I wanted to disappear. To shut down my thoughts. To stop breathing. This wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. They weren't just together. They were together in my house. With my children. She was stepping into my life. And he had let her. I buried my face into the pillow. "God, what do I do?" I whispered. "What the hell do I do?" The next hours slipped by in something close to catatonia. I don't remember the nurse handing me my meds. I don't remember them changing my for. I just nodded, forced a smile, moved on autopilot. Inside, there was nothing. Thick. Dark. Sticky. I felt insane. It was like it wasn't me anymore. Like I was watching a show about someone who just happened to look like me. And fear ate at me. What would happen to my kids? What if he turned them against me? What if she convinced everyone I wasn't fit? What if he took them away forever? I didn't know who to call. What to say. Where to even begin. I had no strength. No faith. Only betrayal. And endless questions with no answers. By evening, one name broke through the fog, Rachel. I wasn't sure I could even speak, but I dialed her number. Hannah. Her voice was warm, surprised. Oh my God, I've been so worried. How are you? I stayed silent for a few seconds before whispering. They're together. Daniel and Megan. I saw the messages. She wrote about the night they spent together. About how happy she was. About the kids getting used to her. The line went quiet. Then Rachel said, "Oh my God. I don't even know what to say. How are you holding up? Like I'm dead. But no one's buried me yet. I don't know what to do, Rachel. I don't know how to live." "You don't need to know right now," she said firmly. "This isn't the time to be strong. This is the time to survive. We'll figure out the rest later." And finally, I cried. Not wild sobs. Not hysterics. Just quiet tears rolling down my face. I'm scared. Scared for the kids. Scared for myself. What if nobody believed me? What if everyone thought I was sick in the head? What if they really replaced me? "Listen," she said. "I'm here. And I know a guy, a security specialist. Key. Discreet. We'll start small. Just find out what's really happening. You're not alone, Han. I won't let them erase you." I sucked in a breath. Deep. Painful. But it was the first one that didn't feel empty. I wasn't strong yet. But in the cracks inside me, something shifted. And through that fracture, maybe, just maybe, a little light could start to seep in. I was terrified. Not for my body, for my mind. For whatever scraps of trust and hope hadn't already been burned to ash. I agreed to Rachel's plan not because I felt brave, but because I couldn't keep lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering, what if I'm wrong? What if none of it's true? I needed to know. When Ryan, her cybersecurity contact, said yes, it gave me something to cling to. "It'll be discreet," he assured me over the phone. "We'll set up some mics. You'll be able to listen live or get the recordings later." I gave him the back door code. Told him when Megan usually took the kids to the park. The thought of a stranger sneaking into my house sickened me. But worse was not knowing what was happening there without me. 2 days later, the first recordings arrived. My fingers shook as I held the phone. I drew in a breath and pressed play. At first, just background noise. Megan laughing. The kids playing. Then Daniel's voice. "She didn't call today. That's good. Maybe she's accepted it. I told you we can't stay in limbo. And the kids love me. They need stability. I just worry that when she comes back, it'll start all over again. The guilt. The tears. The pressure. She won't be back long. With that illness? You said yourself it's only a matter of time. She's barely holding on. Megan. I love you. And the children are our future. I'm their mother now. And you know that's true." Silence. Shuffling. Then the unmistakable sound of a kiss. Intimate. Shameless. I clenched the headphones until my knuckles hurt. My eyes blurred, but no tears came. Not this time. It was confirmation. Cold. Brutal. Even after everything, part of me hadn't believed. But here it was, undeniable. They were together. They had been together. While I lay tethered to IVs, clutching a pillow that smelled like home, she had been taking my home. My children. My husband. My life. And then came another recording. Worse. Megan, sharp with irritation. Chloe's whining again that she misses her mom. I'm sick of hearing it. She has to adjust. This is her new reality. I'm her family now. If she keeps it up, I won't let her go to the hospital. She's still young. She'll forget. And Daniel's voice, low, almost fading. Don't say that. But there was no fire in it. No anger. No fight. I sat in bed listening, and I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt like I was standing on a beach after a hurricane, everything around me destroyed, but the waves had gone eerily still. Now I knew for certain. This was war. Not with fists. Not with guns. But for my children. For myself. And I had to win. Even if I had no idea yet how. I began gathering the pieces of myself. Not because the pain had faded, it hadn't. It was still sharp, cutting into me every single day. But I finally understood something. Every day I stayed silent was another day someone else was living my life. I couldn't allow that anymore. My lawyer, Mrs. Jennings, a woman whose stare could cut through concrete, agreed to act immediately. We need to have your mental health documented, she told me. Go to an independent psychotherapist. If your husband or his attorney tries to paint you as unstable, we'll be ready. So I went. 3 draining sessions, dragging myself in with dark circles under my eyes and a heart that hadn't stopped pounding in survival mode. And yet the doctor wrote, plain as day, patient is fully aware of reality, psychologically stable, thinking clearly. That piece of paper became my shield. But my real weapon was the truth. And I knew I couldn't just rely on recordings or texts. I needed it from the very ones I lived for. My children. I texted Daniel, I wanted to see them. Bring them yourself. Without Megan, I added. She's just helping, he began. Without Megan. He agreed. That day, I spread a blanket over the bed and set out juice and cookies, all I could manage in a hospital room. I wanted my kids to feel that with me, there was still safety. There was still warmth. They walked in quietly. Ethan bolted straight to me, wrapping his little arms around my neck. Mom. You smell like you used to. Chloe lingered. Her eyes studied me cautiously, like something was holding her back. Hi, sweet girl, I smiled. Come sit with me. Daniel excused himself for a few minutes, saying he'd grab chocolate for Ethan from the coffee machine. That left the 3 of us alone. I looked at Chloe, and a lump rose in my throat. Chloe, I whispered. I can see you're sad. Please, tell me what's going on. Her head dropped. Her small hands gripped the edge of the pillow. The silence dragged on. I can't. Why not? Aunt Megan said, if I tell you, I'll never see you again. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Panic at me, sweetheart, I said, holding her face gently in my hands. That's not true. No one can ever separate us. I promise. We're together. Always. This will be our secret, okay? Her eyes brimmed with tears. She lives with us now. In your bedroom. She says she's the boss. She tells us what to do. She gets mad when anyone mentions you. She says, you're not coming back. Does she hurt you? My breath caught in my chest. Chloe nodded. Slowly. Reluctantly. When Dad's not there. She yells at us. And then, she laughs when he gets home. Why didn't you tell me before? Because she said, if Dad got mad, he'd leave us too. I pulled her into me, clutching her tight, my own tears spilling. I'm here. I'm not leaving you. No one will ever silence you again. Never. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. My child had spoken the truth out loud. And now I had a duty, to her, to Ethan, and to myself. I would not let them erase me from my children's lives. After that talk with Chloe, I couldn't close my eyes all night. Not from excitement, but because, for the first time in a long while, I felt certain. Every word she said confirmed what I'd been too afraid to admit out loud. And I knew then, if I stayed quiet, if I gave them even one more day, I wouldn't just be betraying myself. I'd be betraying her. I'd be betraying Ethan. I'd be betraying the mother inside me. The next morning, I filed for divorce. Mrs. Jennings, my lawyer, put it together swiftly and brilliantly. The filing contained everything: psychological evaluations, the audio recordings, my medical reports. All of it laid out so Daniel would have no chance to twist things against me. He didn't know yet. And I wanted him to learn, at the right moment. The doctors decided to discharge me 2 weeks early. My numbers had stabilized, my vitals looked good. I was recovering. I asked them not to tell anyone, not Daniel, not even the kids. This had to stay quiet. Not for revenge. For necessity. Because I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. When I stood in front of my own front door, my hands trembled. The keys still fit. But the house behind that door hadn't been mine for a long time. I stepped in, silently. The kitchen light was on. Laughter drifted out. Megan's laughter. I took a few steps and froze. Candles lit on the table. Wine poured. Food laid out. She was wearing my blouse, the one I'd left in the laundry basket before the hospital. Daniel was pouring her a glass. She laughed, resting her hand on his. They looked like a couple. Neither of them saw me. It'll work out, she was saying. We're almost a family. Just a little longer and we'll be official. You can see it yourself, her condition isn't improving. And the children are mine now. They're with me. Megan, Daniel murmured, looking away. You know I don't want to lose. You already lost her. And that's how it should be. She's weak. We're strong. That's when I stepped forward. Oh, really? My voice was quiet, calm, but it sliced the air like a blade. Megan flinched. Daniel spun around, dropping his glass. It shattered across the floor. Hannah. How? I held up an envelope and a folder. Don't worry. I won't be long. I just came to hand these to you personally. I tossed the envelope into his hands. And I set the folder down on the table. Inside, you'll find recordings of your sweet little chats. Your plans for my children. Your embraces. And something else. My psychiatric evaluation. And the lawyer's file. Megan's face went ghost white. Daniel stood speechless. You erased me from your lives while I was fighting for mine. Now it's my turn. I walked upstairs. Chloe and Ethan were asleep. I packed their things quietly, a few toys, pajamas, their favorite book. When I came back down with them in my arms, Daniel was frozen in the hallway, as if searching for words. No, I stopped him with a single look. Not to me. Not in front of them. And then we walked out. I didn't look back. I never imagined I'd end up in a courtroom, holding my 8-year-old daughter's hand, while the man I once danced with at our wedding and the woman who used to call me sister sat across from me. For a while, the kids and I stayed in a small hotel. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and safe. Chloe traced hearts on the window glass and wrote, I read Heart Mom. Ethan built pillow forts and called them castles. I promised them it was only temporary. The truth was harder. I had no idea how long this battle would last. The court date was set quickly. In my filing, I asked for full custody of the children, the house, coverage for my medical treatment, and restrictions on Megan's contact with the kids. My lawyer, Mrs. Jennings, told me firmly, "We're not just aiming to win. We want the court to see this for what it is, not just betrayal, but abuse. Deception. Emotional abuse." I nodded. They tried to erase me. But I'm still here. On the morning of the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse in a plain dark coat. No jewelry. No makeup. Strong, not in looks, but in the fact that I showed up. That I hadn't run. Inside, they were already seated. Megan, polished hair, beige suit, a fake smile painted on. Daniel, unable to meet my eyes, staring down when I passed. I was called first to testify. And I told them everything. Calm. Clear. I spoke of my treatment, of the agony of being away from my children. How my friends' help turned into something else. Chloe's fears. Megan's threats. How my little boy began to dread the woman he was supposed to call aunt. Then came the evidence, letters, medical reports, the recordings. Each piece landed like a slap. Megan pressed her lips tight. Daniel never once looked up. When it was their turn, their defense was pitiful. "It was just support," Daniel muttered. "We didn't mean harm. It just happened." I was under pressure. "The children needed a woman," Megan added. "I only wanted to help. If I was too strict, I regret it. But I'm not their mother." The judge cut in sharply, locking her eyes on Megan. "No. You are not their mother. And you had no right to pretend otherwise. This court will not allow adults' personal choices to damage the psychological well-being of children." For a moment, the room was silent. Even Daniel flinched. 2 weeks later, I received the ruling. Full custody, mine. The house, mine. Financial compensation, Daniel's responsibility. And Megan, banned from any contact with my children unless I gave explicit permission. I read the decision and didn't cry. I simply sat on the bed, pulled Ethan into my arms. Chloe looked at me and asked softly, "Now we're really going home, Mom?" "Yes," I said. Home. It wasn't the end of everything. But it was the victory that mattered most. I had my life back. And in my children's eyes, I was once again exactly who I had always been. Their mom. Their only mom. Their real mom. 6 months went by. The house was mine again. Ours again, mine and the kids. I changed the curtains, repainted the bedroom, and got rid of every single thing Megan had brought into my home. Even the smallest, most meaningless objects, napkins, a vase, a teapot, were tossed out. It wasn't redecorating. It was a cleansing. Ethan laughed in his sleep again. Chloe no longer glanced nervously at the door when I left for the store. And me? I could breathe. Not always. Not every morning. But more and more often. I kept going to checkups. My condition stayed steady. Dr. Lawson, the same man who first said the word lupus to me, smiled and told me, "Your liver's a fighter. But most importantly, so are you." One visit, when Chloe and Ethan were with me, he leaned in and whispered, "I think you're stronger than half my patients. And half the people I know outside this hospital." I laughed. "It's not really a choice. It's the only option." He walked us to the door, helped Ethan button his jacket. Chloe tugged at my hand and asked, "Mom, is that the doctor who saved you?" "Yes, sweetheart. He's nice. Can you be friends with him?" I looked at him, and we both laughed. It started simple. Talking outside the hospital. Then coffee after appointments. Then a few texts. And eventually, dinner. Nothing rushed. I wasn't ready for some grand romance. But I was ready for something good. Something steady. Something real. He didn't dig into my wounds with questions. He didn't push. He didn't try to play the hero. He just was. And for the first time in years, being was enough. Then, one day, Daniel appeared. I came home from a walk with the kids and saw his car parked outside. "Hi," he said quietly as I walked up. "Is something wrong?" "No. I just wanted to see them." "It's not your day. You have a schedule. Today, isn't it?" "Hannah," his voice cracked. I ruined everything. I stood silent. Chloe pressed against me. Ethan clung to my hand. "She left. Megan. She's gone." She said what we had was just impulse. He swallowed hard. And I'm all alone. And I realized everything real I destroyed. He tried to meet my eyes. I turned away. "Daniel, you didn't just destroy what we had. You destroyed who I was. I forgave you, for me, not for you. But you don't have a place in my life anymore." He opened his mouth to speak, but I stopped him. "Be a good father. Come when you're supposed to. Don't be late. Bring them back on time. That's all. Nothing more." And I closed the door. No anger. No tears. Just closure. And it was the sweetest closure of my life. Exactly 1 year had passed. I woke up at 6:47 a.m., not from an alarm, not from fear, not from tears. Just because I wanted to wake up. The sunlight slipped through the curtains. Chloe, with her sweater on inside out, was already at the kitchen table, drawing with her markers. Ethan, still in his pajamas, whispered secrets to his stuffed lion. And there I was, standing in the doorway with a cup of coffee, realizing. I am happy. Not because life was flawless. But because everything in it was finally mine. I often think back to that time, the hospital room, the mask over my face, IVs in my arms, my heart splitting apart with fear and loneliness. Back then, I truly believed I would never rise again. But I did. Not quickly. Not gracefully. Not like a hero. I fell over and over before I managed to stand. Then to walk. Then to fight, for myself, for my kids, for the truth. The diagnosis doesn't echo in my head every day anymore. I manage it. I follow the treatments. I'm alive. And every morning brings something new. Once, the unknown felt terrifying, full of emptiness, isolation, anxiety. Now, it feels like freedom. Like my choice. Like my space. Lawson isn't just my doctor anymore. We don't label it a serious relationship. We just are. He comes over for dinner. He crouches on the floor with Ethan to play dinosaurs. He reads Chloe bedtime stories. Sometimes we just sit together, holding hands in silence. No words needed. Because sometimes words aren't the point. I don't know where it will all lead. But I'm no longer afraid of not knowing. Because I've finally learned to live in the present. And that is enough. And Daniel? He sees the kids on schedule. More or less. He's quieter now, older, worn down. I can see him trying to make peace with himself. But that's no longer my story. I wish him peace. And I thank him only for one thing, our children. Nothing more. Because everything else worth holding on to, I built on my own. Today Chloe handed me a card. In her crooked letters, she wrote. Mom, you are my hero. You didn't cry when it hurt. You were with me. And you always will be. I cried. Not from pain this time. But from gratitude. I walked through hell. And I came out still myself. No, more than that. I came out myself again. That evening, I hung Chloe's card on the fridge beside her newest drawing and Ethan's photo from school. I stood back and looked at the wall, bright, messy, ours. For the first time in years, the house felt whole again. No shadows. No intruders. Just us. Home.